Okie dokie. Hi, Bobby. Shall we do this thing?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Luke Rowan. I am part of the sales team here at EdApp, working with partners all the time to get them familiar with new features like we're talking about today. I've got Bobby with me. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, good to see you again, Luke.
Absolutely. So I'm down under, actually, guys. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. You might be able to tell by the lights ahead of me. And Bobby's actually in our New York City team. Bobby, tell the people what your role is and yeah, who you look after.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a client success manager here in the US. I usually look after the small to mid-sized businesses that come through. And yeah, I'm really excited today to chat about these features that we've been talking about for a little while now. So it's great to finally be able to demo this for everyone on the call today.
Wonderful. Yeah, you reminded me there. We actually did a preview on these features a couple of months ago to talk about the fact that they were being built, they were being piloted with a few customers, small customers and large customers from various industries to gather your feedback, guys. And they're launching. The wonderful news is that practical assessments is being deployed to the platform next week. So when you log into your accounts, you'll see it there, ready to play with. And the second feature that we're talking about today, group training, is coming in a couple of weeks, probably mid-July. But of course, if you wanted a sneak preview of it and you wanted to test it in a beta environment, you can, of course, reach out to us and we can give you early access. Let's get into today's session. We've got people from the USA, we've got Latin America, we've got Europe. Everyone who's up right now is on this webinar because it's super exciting. We love talking about new features at EdApp, and hopefully we can show you some things today, guys, that will really impress you and really take your training to the next level. Of course, hit the chat. So Bobby and I are going to run through this demo together and call out the questions as they come through. If there's any tricky ones, we might leave them to the end so we can kind of dive deep into them. But if there's anything that you guys want to shout out as we go through, of course, we can answer them live and talk about, your business in context with the features that we're discussing. So today's webinar is broken into two parts. Firstly, practical assessments. What is it? How do you use it? How do you apply it to your business? Number two, group training. So let's talk about those features from a very high level first. So why have we arrived at developing these features? Of course, the EdApp wish list is as long as Santa's Christmas list. It's massive. We get customers telling us all day that they want certain features, and of course we're listening. But of course we have to prioritize certain things. And these two features have been perhaps the most requested out of everything that we've heard in the last 12 months, I would say. And the reason why they're so important is that our customers want the ability to blend in-person activity with the theory that they currently do in EdApp. Of course, the core proposition of EdApp is microlearning, interactive, exciting, digital delivery of training. But a very key part of training is done offline. 85% of workplaces deploy face-to-face training. And of course, a lot of that is done by using spreadsheets, which is quite an antiquated way of tracking activity with training. So today we're talking about these two features, practical assessments and group training, that really aim to bring those sorts of functions inside of EdApp and make life easy for you. Bobby, any reflection from what your customers have told you about these sorts of features in terms of, I guess, changing up the day-to-day of using EdApp or, streamlining things? Any insights there?
Yeah, I think both of these features are a great way to incorporate the in-person type of training into EdApp for the first time. And I think my clients are really excited to actually have that recorded as a part of our analytics suite, which
Mhm.
for those of our customers now, you know how great it is. So, if someone does an assessment, you'll be able to see the results in there, and you can also see detailed results and any notes or perhaps any photos, depending on how the assessment is structured, which you'll see how that works in a moment here. But I think that's
Yeah.
what they're really excited about, that we have these modules, and now you can actually have a real life scenario that your learners can go through to pretty much make sure that they were paying attention and that they actually absorbed the knowledge that they learned, and that can be maybe on their own if they're taking the modules on their own time, or again maybe it's something that was spoken about that you want them to absorb. So I think that that's pretty much what they're most excited about.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, definitely the compliance piece is really key here. So tracking, as you said, Bobby, tracking that in a nice, safe, secure place and being able to pull it out when you need it. For example, if you're doing an internal audit of staff competence, or potentially OSHA comes knocking on your door, you want to be able to grab this information very quickly and easily. So, as I said before, EdApp at its core is a micro-learning platform. We have really reimagined the way that you deliver your online learning. We do that with theory, we do that with video, interactive GIFs, games, survey questions. There's lots of different ways to present content. But what we're talking about here is bringing in group training for classroom tracking, practical assessments for in-person assessments. And then on the right-hand side here, we just wanted to make mention to our feature called Brain Boost as well, which we think when you pull all of these things together, you get a pretty exciting solution. The idea that you can use theory to introduce topics, in-person training to really drive home the message, practical assessment to understand whether learners have actually gained those competencies. And then Brain Boost at the end is our feature to reinforce automatically the content that a learner has been presented. So what it does is tracks the learner's behavior. It will understand whether they got questions right or wrong, and then it will automatically repeat that content back to them. So you can use all of these features independently, but hopefully this slide gets you thinking that, okay, when they're all combined, you've got a pretty exciting proposition. Let's get into practical assessments. So practical assessments, as you may have read, is a way for you to deliver those in-person assessments. The visuals on this slide hopefully paint a bit of a picture for you where you've got the learner application and the assessor application, and they interact together. So as a learner, I've got my iPhone, I bring it up, I bring up the QR code, and that is me ready to participate in the assessment. The supervisor, Bobby, for example, brings up his phone, and what he does is scans that QR code, and then that tees off the practical assessment. And we're going to show you this live in a second. But that is really the nuts and bolts of the way the feature works. From there, obviously scan, assess, and track. So in the back end, capturing all of the analytics about, what has been understood on the day. In terms of use cases, there are many for this sort of feature. I think it's very easy to just start to think about manual labor settings, manufacturing, construction, safety assessments, SOPs, understanding, performing practical assessments against core criteria to doing a job. For example, if you're assembling goods on a line, for example, there is a specific set of criteria that you need to do in an order of steps. And potentially a practical assessment would follow those steps to make sure the individual knows their stuff. If you're not in those fields, if you're in retail or hospitality, for example, think about assessing your audience with regard to their customer service skills. Or if you're in a sales team like me, maybe it's an assessment of my sales pitch, which is probably pretty terrible, but it's always good to get that feedback. So
I wouldn't say that, Luke.
lots of different use cases here. Hopefully we can talk about a few right now. So let's get into the demo. So I'm just going to hop out of this presentation right here, open up my browser. Do you see my browser window here, Bobby?
We do.
Awesome. Any questions so far, Bobby, worth calling out before I jump into demo mode?
It looks like we're okay right now, but if any come up, I'll mention them.
Okay, great. Awesome. So let's get into it. So what you're looking at on my screen is the admin console of EdApp if you're super fresh to the platform. We've got a range of courses in here that span a few different topics to hopefully cater to people's interests on the call. I think a really good place to start with trying to understand practical assessments is to talk about safety in the workplace. And this particular course here is one that has come from our library. It's really a safety 101 that has a range of topics in it that most organizations would deploy. PPE, safe lifting, slips, trips, and falls, irrespective of the industry you're in. You know, these sorts of safety trainings are rather essential. What you're looking at on my screen here is the micro-learning theory side of EdApp. Obviously, we're not here today to talk about it, but for anyone that's super new, just at a glance, this is what EdApp micro-learning looks like. It's interactive, it's fun, it's mobile first, it's obviously fully responsive. So if you're on a desktop or a mobile or a tablet, it's going to look great. Okay, so now let's have a look at the practical assessment for this particular module. So we'll go in and edit. So therefore, we're looking at right now the structure of this course. We can see that it has the 4 micro lessons, which could be pre-assessments before taking the practical. And we have our practical assessment here. To create a practical assessment, you just go with the normal create buttons. You've got create a lesson, create a discussion, virtual classroom, and a practical assessment here. To hopefully paint a picture quite quickly, we're going to have a look at a pre-built example here, just so that we can show off a criteria without spending 20 minutes building something from scratch. So what we're looking at here is the authoring experience, the content builder experience for this practical assessment. On the left, you've got all of the different types of components of a list. Radio buttons, for example, yes or no interactions. These check boxes, which are suitable for pre-assessment checks. For example, is the person doing X, Y, and Z before you assess their skills? Of course, when you're performing an in-person assessment, it is often critical to capture evidence of performance or, you know, what has happened. So we can do that. All of these fields on the left, we'll hop into the different variations a little bit more in a second. But this is just a glance at the authoring experience. And just to show you how easy it is to build content, it's really just a drag and drop format. So if I wanted to update what we already have here, I just drag in a new element, give it a title. This is a select box component. So it might be steps of the process, give it a quick title, and then we'll add in our data points, step 1, step 2, etc., etc. Obviously, we've got a few of those examples right here in our pre-built form. So that is the content creator side of it. If I now switch over to the browser for my learner experience and my assessor experience, we can start to kind of role play the sort of scenario that I was talking about before, where a learner has their device, the supervisor is on site, and they undertake an assessment. So on the left here, this is the learner app. This is what you see as a learner when you download EdApp. You've got your list of courses. Of course, it's tailored to who you are and your role, etc. But if we
Hey,
hop,
Luke, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Could we, I wanted to answer a question actually. So,
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Elizabeth,
ahead.
Elizabeth here asked, if you're in a remote setting, how would you scan a QR code? So what Luke is showing you right now, this is where you could go through the facilitate tab. There is going to be a practical assessments tab. So as long as the course is published in the admin portal, you'll be able to see that practical assessment in this screen on the right hand side here. Yep, right there.
Yeah.
So all the published courses that have practical assessments in there will show up here. And then Luke's about to, show you what's going to happen next right now.
Really great point there. Exactly. So it isn't mandatory for the learner to bring up the practical assessment trigger here. This isn't mandatory. Of course, it's an interaction that we encourage because it is a great way for an assessor to go out on site and, trigger off the practical assessment. But if you've just got a assessor going out and they just want to go straight to the admin console and trigger an assessment, just as I'm doing here with this safe lifting practical, they can basically pan through the participants, select someone. If we select Paul here and start that practical assessment without scanning this. So it can be, you can go ahead and manually find individuals and start the assessments. Hopefully that answers that question. It's a really good one. I have heard that question from some of our mining customers actually, who kind of position the same question, but it's more about connectivity as well. Can I do this when I'm offline? If, for example, you're underground in a mine, to do that, or to do what we're currently showing you, does actually require network connection to do the assessor piece. They need to access the web in order to trigger this form here. We are working on features to allow this functionality offline as well, completely offline. We don't have that just yet, but it's just around the corner. Okay, so let's have a look at it here. So assume as an assessor, I've just scanned that code. We've brought up the user, we've brought up the assessment, and here we can kind of envision a scenario where the assessor says, okay, well, let's get started. I'm just going to check the fact that you are lifting an item that's safe for one person. Great. I'm also going to check that you're wearing the proper PPE. Those are our pre-assessment checks done. The next step is to say, okay, well, did the person perform the procedure correctly? In safe lifting, obviously, got to bend your knees. So we'll say yes, because we witnessed that. But we want to upload the evidence as well that has been the case. Let me just scroll down here. I've got a little screenshot on my desktop. Great. And I'll add that one in. I'll upload that evidence. Great. Uploaded that photo. Was the back straight? Okay, wonderful. I can upload another image if I like. And then the final step of this form is to submit and give a pass or fail and feedback. So you could say overall, great job, X, Y, and Z. Of course, this is a very simple form. This feature would lend itself to a forklift assessment, for example, or heavy vehicle inspections, or anything that is really detailed assessments. But just for the purposes of this demo, we've kept it pretty short and sharp.
Hey, Luke.
Sorry, go ahead.
We got a bunch of questions coming in, actually.
Yeah, fire away.
Yeah. We have another one from Elizabeth here. Are there limitations on types of files that can be uploaded? I believe it's just JPEGs or PNGs for the practical assessment forms, but we can get clarification on that for you.
Absolutely. At the moment, we are just accepting those image files. The team are working on accepting video. That is a couple of weeks away. So we understand that that's critical to assessments as well. Other file types, we would love to hear your feedback as to what you believe is necessary, and we can pass that on to the team if they're not already thinking about it. Yeah, great question.
Cool.
So if you wanted to send us more detail on that, just shoot us a note. We'll put our email in the chat and we'd love to hear from you.
For sure, for sure. I have a question here from Blake. It's not really about practical assessments, but it's kind of about our micro learning format.
Yeah.
I can take this one too. And I think this is a common misconception that people have about EdApp. It's, we're a micro learning platform where each lesson, is pretty short, but you could still, conduct a full length course in here. It's just how you want to structure the lessons. And I think that, if you have a longer form course, you can still deploy it in EdApp. And maybe you might want to break it up into a couple of courses or use some of our modules that Luke has shown before. For grouping maybe practical assessments into one and then maybe lessons into another. So I think that you can definitely deploy full-length courses in that app.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We have universities deploying full graduate programs using EdApp, which are, very comprehensive, lengthy courses. The length of the amount of content is totally up to you. This course is rather simple. It has 4 or 5 minute lessons in it and a practical assessment. It could be far more extensive than this. And if you're talking about a full program, normally it would consist of a collection of courses, which is the next level up in the hierarchy. So if, for example, you've got a comprehensive safety induction for, an environment that's quite hazardous, you've probably got 20 courses that you want an individual to work through when they first join, and then refreshers ongoing. So there's nothing to stop you from adding as much content as you like, and that is typical. The other thing is that the length of an individual module, we do kind of prescribe to the idea that short and sharp micro learning is optimal, but we also understand that many topics don't lend themselves to a 5-minute lesson. For example, if you do have a 20-minute video that needs to be watched end to end to have it make sense, then of course you can add that to the tool and it looks great. The other thing, the final note to kind of draw out on that is that EdApp is a fully responsive experience that works really well on desktop as well. So if you've got longer content, often we hear from partners that if a module is half an hour long, then maybe it does makes sense to instruct someone to hop on a desktop to jump into it because they need to take more time with it. It's entirely up to you.
Cool.
Awesome. Any other questions there, Bobby?
I'm answering some in the chat right now. I think we can go on just for time's sake, but if any come up, I'll let you know.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thanks for those questions there. Let's have a look at another few quick examples. We've obviously got to jump onto group training as well. But I just want to show some other practical assessments to get people thinking about the possibilities here. If I just hop out of this one on the left, I can obviously save and exit. There's a lot of nuances to this feature that we're not really going into. For example, an assessment being started and then exiting halfway through if something happens. Of course, it can be resumed. The pass-fail component as well is a big thing. For example, if someone fails, then that assessment can be retaken again at a later time. From the learner's perspective, if I just go into this cappuccino or espresso making course, which we might deliver in a cafe, for example, here you can see that there's been no assessment done for this individual thus far. If it had been undertaken and they failed, then they would have that result there and they could obviously talk with their manager about taking it again next week, for example. Let's have a look at this cappuccino example. It's got a few different uses of the different components in it, which will show us some other examples of how to use the feature. So I'm just going to trigger this practical assessment, assuming that we've got Betty White on the left-hand side, RIP. So the elements of this cappuccino assessment are different types of fields. So Firstly, we want the individual or the assessor to tell us where they are. So what store are they performing this in? If you're on site, for example, if you're a construction company, maybe you're selecting the job site there. The experience level here in a cafe setting, obviously a barista has got different levels of experience. Again, if you're, in a more manual field, maybe it's a drop down of certifications that you want to nominate to store this data against this assessment. Here we've got a radio button selection here. Was this process undertaken? Did the person fasten the handle tightly? And down here, this is an example of a survey component. A survey component, as we can see in this setup here, is a great way to provide ratings against performance of certain tasks. So it's not just a yes or no outcome. It's actually a field where the assessor can say, okay, this person did get the temperature pretty good. Their cleanliness was amazing. And the speed, maybe they've got a brush up on it. So it's just a different format of input that allows you to flex your form in a way that suits the content that you're capturing or assessing on. Again, we've got our image uploads. And then here at the bottom, we've got a free text field. So here, describe the flavor notes. Okay, it was strong and X, Y, and Z. I'm not quite the coffee connoisseur, but hopefully everyone can see what we're trying to convey here. And again, the pass or fail outcome that we can draw upon. Bobby, any questions?
Yeah, it's hard to keep up actually. Just give me a moment here.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, there was one about having like a series of like strongly agree, like disagree or strongly disagree. I think that probably the survey section, like the survey box on the left-hand side, would probably be the best one to do for that.
Yeah,
but it is something that you can definitely do using the practical assessments.
Let's have a look at that here. This is kind of what we were showing just a second ago with the 1 to 5 rating scale.
Exactly.
Thanks for pulling that out. It's a really good question. So this survey for performance right now uses a 1 to 5 rating, and we have a prompt here that the assessor needs to score on a 1 to 5. But if that's not the way that you do things, then you just change up the data or build it differently to begin with. So instead of 1, maybe it's a poor, maybe it's a good, maybe it's an excellent, and the 4 is our perfect. And then we'll get rid of the 5 here. Save that one. Okay, now we've got our updated form. So you've got a different criteria here. Obviously, we built this from scratch before we hopped on the webinar, but if I just go to this survey template again and bring it in, we can start to build it out. So you've got your questions, question 1, question 2, and then you've got your values for good, great. So very, very easy to build. And the last tab in this component that you'll play around with when we deploy it, guys, is the validation. So if it is mandatory that the assessor responds to this component, we can just check that box there.
Thanks for showing that, Luke.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's a really great question. We had that one come up in our APAC webinar as well. So very key. The other components here, while we're in here, text field. So when you're capturing a free text response from the assessor, a commentary, number based. So if you need to put in a number, maybe it's an employee number, or maybe it's a score out of 100, or something else. The select boxes give you the ability to create those different elements that we were looking at a second ago. We've got radio buttons, which we've shown quite a bit. If it is valuable to capture day and time, you can drop those components in. Note that when we do undertake the assessment, it does timestamp the assessment in the analytics to make sure that, you know, we capture exactly when it was undertaken. But potentially if a date and time is relevant for input otherwise, then you can add it in here. Survey we looked at, content, image upload, and this list, just as an FYI, is growing, and it will grow with feedback from our customers. We're in our first iteration launch here, so there's a long way to go to get this feature perfect for everybody. So definitely give us your feedback. Okay, let's look at our last example here in terms of assessments, a bit of product knowledge. I think this is kind of a fun one. If anyone's on the call and you're kind of in a more sales or product focused capacity. The example here around the F-150 vehicle is an example bit of product education with some media that we took from the Ford website. It really shows a great way to present EdApp content. I think most customers that use EdApp for product education really love the way that we present video and rich media and assessments, etc. But that's not why we're here today. We see a great opportunity to deliver practical assessments for salespeople around product knowledge. So maybe it is a practical assessment of an individual and how they might talk about the F-150. So let's go through this mock example here. Did the salesperson speak with confidence? So just imagining that we're on the showroom floor. Me as a trainer, I tell my staff member, okay, well, tell me about the vehicle. Okay, yes, you were confident. Did you exercise the professionalism and refer to me by name? Was there any other free text feedback? Okay, and here are those selectable boxes that I was looking at before. So did the salesperson mention the key features of the pitch? Did they talk about the different engine types and overall performance? So this one here is actually not using the survey component. It's using radio buttons to provide the kind of performance metric. So the components can be used any way that you want. I'm looking at Bobby's face and there might be a question there. He's contemplating something.
We just had one that I answered, but I think we should bring it up here. Someone asked, is there a way that you could indicate what equals like a pass or a fail to the admin or facilitator? And I think what you could do is we do have a text field where you could just write text where it's not like a box where they would fill something out. So you could indicate to the learner that, maybe, I don't know, maybe like if you're using yes or no type of tick boxes, maybe, 5 yeses equals a pass and anything less than that would be a fail. So that could be something that you could do. It's pretty much up to the admin or the facilitator, but if you want to give some guidance on that, you can add that to the actual assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this F-150 example has it down the bottom here. So we've got overall performance here. So this is a reference point in the assessment to note the performance. The outcome here, this form, this pop-up here, right now it isn't customizable. You can add feedback to describe what had happened, but it is a pass-fail outcome. You can obviously use the form to capture as much detailed information as possible. If anyone believes that this isn't as flexible as they need, let us know. We'll pass it on to the team. It's again something that we're working with all the time. Okay, so I think we've covered the practical assessments. I think we could spend all day here, but there is a second part of this. Oh, there's a custom achievement, lots of fun. There's a
Hey,
second
Luke.
part of this webinar.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Could we just show? We had a question on where they could find the results. And I think
Go
there
ahead.
it's as a learner, and as an admin. So yeah, as an admin, it's going to be this screen that
Yeah,
Luke is showing right here. You can
great.
also see like multiple attempts as well. And then from the learner's perspective, there actually is So it's going to have like a PDF version here, where you as an admin or a facilitator could see that. But there also is a section in the learners app that learners could see their results pretty much in that same PDF format. They can either go into the course, or there actually is a separate section now in the My Profile section, I believe, that'll have all of their practical assessments. Yeah. So this is where you can see here, there was no feedback because it's in progress in this scenario, but they can either see it from their profile or from the individual course in the learners app.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we should probably move on. I'll try to answer it. There's a couple other questions, but I can answer it in the chat here. But
Awesome.
yeah, we can try to move on to group training now.
Well, just an FYI, Bobby's got about 7 hours left in his day. So if anyone wants to try the demo, hit him up. I'm off to bed. Let's have a look at group training. So I'll just navigate back to the homepage here. But before we do that, let's just spend a quick second in the slides. I know that everyone would prefer the live demo to slides, but I just want to set it up to make sure everyone's on the same page. So why group training? As we said at the top of the call, typically you are bringing people into a classroom or a web conference like this to deliver your face-to-face component. And now we want to give you the ability to track who was there, and secondly, provide a really dynamic way to present content. When you're in these kind of face-to-face sessions, it's not mandatory that you have a visual aid, however, it's normally a PowerPoint. EdApp obviously has a very rich visual display, and we want to give you the opportunity to use that in your in-person delivery as well. Use cases here, so toolbox talks, safety briefings, annual safety refreshers for fire safety drills, for example, or, if we're talking about other group trainings, maybe if you run a restaurant, you bring your staff in once a week to talk about menu changes, for example, and you want to track who was there. Obviously, with updates with COVID safety policies or health policies, it's a mandatory thing to track that your staff members have participated. So lots of different examples, and face-to-face training is really the backbone of learning. So we want to provide a really easy way to track it. Let's get into it here. So we're back in the admin console. So we've got our courses here. We've got the practical assessments, but we have two modules here. One is the weekly toolbox talk, understanding that safety briefings happen on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis for lots and lots of our customers. And we've got our annual fire safety refresher, which might be bringing everybody into a room, discussing the fundamentals of fire safety and going through the drill, for example. Probably happens more often than that. So in order to enable group training, what we do is we set it up on the course. So we've got this module here. We go up to course settings and we enable group training. So group training is an extension of that course. From there, as the trainer or facilitator, we go into the group training section of the admin. And just bear in mind, right now, you're looking at the fully featured admin console with all of the different parts of the platform. Yes, as an admin, you can access this feature, but if you wanted to just provide your trainers access with just the ability to facilitate, then you could do that. You don't have to give them the ability to delete and add users or view analytics. It's completely separate if you want it to be. So let's get into this. So I've just brought everyone into the classroom. Hi, Bobby. Welcome to today's session. let's kick off the session. So I start the session and now we're in group training mode. Before I get started with my presentation, Bobby, I want to record that you're here. So we bring up this screen and there's two ways in which we can record Bobby's attendance. The first is, Bobby, if you've got your phone there, you can scan that QR code for me and self-register. The second is, as a facilitator, we can log people into this session. We can search through a drop down here, or we can search for them by name or employee number or email, and basically just performing a roll call to say who was there in the session and logging their attendance. So you've got both approaches. We've also heard from customers talk about the fact that maybe this display is put on an iPad in the room, and individuals, if they don't have their phone there, but they still want to just acknowledge or sign themselves up, they just do it digitally on the iPad. So that's another option as well. So lots of different variations of the way that different businesses perform group trainings, but we've thought about them all. So now that we've logged who is there, the second key part of this feature is presentation mode. So as I said before, a group training often is supported by a PowerPoint, visuals, video, etc., to convey the messages of the day. So what we see as being really powerful is to use the EdApp format of presenting micro-learning as also a medium for presenting content for group training sessions. So here we're cycling through this EdApp template to talk about introductory messages for, in this case, hand safety, which is our topic of our toolbox talk this week. You can see here the different interactive EdApp templates. We can zoom in, and as a presenter, I can say, okay, well, the first step of wearing hand safety is this, X, Y, and Z. Bobby, any questions there?
Yeah, we actually have one about single sign-on.
Oh, okay.
So we had a question if can someone self-register via single sign-on? The answer to that's no. So they would either have to, as a learner, would either have to actually scan that QR code, or they would have to be registered by an admin or a facilitator. And then
just to roll back quickly there. So
yeah,
single sign-on obviously is your first entry into the application. So that triggers your session into the app. So provided that has been done, then you can scan the code. But the learner, it requires that the learner is logged in the first place.
Right.
So
right.
It is a yes. It's just the login needs to happen before we get into group training mode. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks, Luke. Just one more. Someone was asking, how did you get to group training for the course again? So the setting would need to be enabled in course settings on the course. And then once it is, then you can go to the group training section in the admin portal. And then any course that has that feature enabled on it would show up there.
Absolutely. I'll go back to that in just a second, and we'll rehash that. I love getting into the weeds on these webinars. It's awesome. I think it's great. It's great. So let me just wrap up with this presentation mode, and then we can go back into the configuration side and show everyone how to do it. The point that I wanted to make about this presentation mode, in addition to what I was just saying about a kind of very flexible way to present content that is a little bit more exciting than a PowerPoint, is that the assessment questions that we have here in a typical EdApp micro lesson can also be used to engage your in-person audience. So as a presenter, I can address the room and say, okay, well, I've just walked you through the introductory pieces on gloves, wearing gloves and the importance, let's answer this question together. So is it A, B, or C, or a combination of those? So that could be people in a room calling out the answer, or if you really want to be tricky with it, you could actually assign them a module on EdApp on their phone and basically say, okay, well, it's time for your pop quiz in the classroom. Bring up EdApp and go through this quiz. And there we track each individual's performance and their answers separately, which is then stored in analytics. So lots of different variations in the way that you do things. You can just keep it simple. I think that, the vision of lots of interactivity and X, Y, and Z is amazing. But fundamentally, this feature is just about saying, okay, if you're gathering people in a room, ditch the spreadsheet for tracking and get them logging that content in this environment. So I'll go back just here. I'll end that session. When you end a session, what it does is just stores the analytics for everyone that was there. If we were to go up to our analytics tab and look at completions, that's where you would find the log of individuals that participated in that session. We've been looking at this toolbox talk all the time. We've got our annual fire safety module here, just to kind of go back and talk about how it was configured per the question just a second ago. Let's have a look. I can see that we're kind of coming up on time, so I might put the hammer down and wrap this up pretty shortly. In terms of configuration, what you do is you firstly create a course. So that is the starting point for group training, as we've got with this one here. We can edit that course, and this one here consists of a number of modules. And then to enable group training on that course, you go to settings, scroll down, and enable the group training on it. And then what that does is qualifies that course for this separate section here in the admin for group training. You can see it there. So then from there, you can go in and start your session. Importantly, at this point, and as we saw just a second ago, if I started and ended this toolbox talk session, so that captured everybody that participated in that session. If this was a weekly occurrence and I wanted to run this next week and capture again who was there, I would just come back to this same module and start again, log attendees, let's say Vince Diesel was here. And then we end the session and we record that person participated. So you can record as many kind of individual sessions as you like on a single module. Bobby, questions?
Just one more important one, I think, that I want to go over. Got one from Stuart here. It says, could a course be both a group training course and an app completion course? So pretty much, can someone do it individually and then in a group setting? You can, you just have to be careful, because if you do it individually first and then attend a group training session, the group training session, I believe, would override that individual training record in analytics. So if you want to do like a quiz or something after this, it probably would be better to separate it out into a separate course or use our rapid refresh quizzing function to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly it. So anyone that attends the group training course that's associated to the course, if they have attended and the session is complete, then their analytics will be stored as complete against the course, irrespective of whether they've gone through the lessons separately. So if you want to separate those two things, then what you would do is duplicate your safety in the workplace course, for example, here. We can populate it here. Okay, we've got our new module here. We would then go in and edit. So typically a group training session may not be as comprehensive as your theory components. So you might want to cut those down and modify them. And we can do that with a few clicks here. We can get rid of the practical assessment, obviously. We can get rid of safe lifting. So then this is a completely separate module that can have analytics stored against it. We can publish that module. And then from there, we go up to our settings. Actually, I might just give it a new. So this is our safety induction toolbox. Great. And here we go up to course settings, enable group training. Awesome. Group training. And there it is there. So that is completely separate from the theory component that lives in the other part of the application.
I think that's it for questions right now, Luke, actually.
Okay, wonderful. Is there any, we've covered off those two features. Any other questions about the platform that we can answer while we're all here? Happy to talk about any other, integration pieces, or obviously we had that question about SSO, which is integration is always a critical part of discovering EdApp. So yeah, fire away if anyone has any questions. If you'd like to catch up with us separately, I'm just going to pop out my email in the chat here, and Bobby, maybe you can do so as well. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to provide kind of direct one-to-one demos of these features. As I said, they're coming out. Practical assessments will be available in your EdApp accounts next week, and group training slightly after. However, if you want a sneak preview, we can set that up for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you have a client success manager, definitely contact them, and they can, provide a one-on-one session with you. I'm hoping to do a lot of these in the next couple of weeks. So they can definitely assist you if you do have an account manager. And if you don't, then you could also, access our support website or access our live chat for more support as well.
Brilliant.
All right, Luke. Yeah, I think that's okay.
Yeah. There's just a note here about managing this sort of content if you don't have a lot of resource internally, which, there's a lot under the hood to EdApp. But I think that if you are in that situation, you're definitely in the right place. When we started EdApp a couple of years back, we're pretty new. We came in, and a big part of our mission is the idea of democratizing learning. So giving organizations, irrespective of their size, the tools to be able to build really exciting learning and assessments with total ease. We didn't really build anything live on the call today. We popped in a few example components to our assessment, but it's super easy to do. When you start to get into the EdApp authoring tool, which we didn't really look at, let's have a look at this forward example here. We edit this content. So our approach to authoring is kind of like a sophisticated PowerPoint. If you want to upload graphics, if you want to modify content, it's a drag and drop approach. If I just bring in this logo here to pop into the background, you'll see that it updates in real time. You can publish it to audiences. We can easily upload video for, providing extensive descriptions on certain topics. We can add in games and assessment templates. It's very, very easy to use. And although, we have a great team like Bobby that look after many of our customers, many of EdApp's customers never talk to us. They sign up and they learn the system by watching YouTube clips, and they get started super easily. So if you are a one-man band, that's totally fine. You'll learn it pretty quickly. But of course, we have really extensive resource internally if you wanted us to help with some of that heavy lifting as well. And build a few courses for you, for example. Yeah, very easy to do. Okay. Anyone else? Any final questions before we wrap this show up?
We have a couple about like scheduling for group training sessions. So there's no way to like send an invite out to someone to attend the group training session, but what you potentially could do is, maybe you can use, and this is just something that I was thinking of, you can potentially use like a calendar system and have people register for that. And then, whenever, you're ready to do that, and maybe, especially if you're holding it virtually, maybe you can enter in a virtual meeting link in there. And then from there, that's where they can register, or you can just, type in the people who are there that attended the session, and then you can run it. So we don't have like a calendar based system yet in EdApp here. But it is something that we're taking a look at, and perhaps, later on down the line that can be added.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome.
But yeah, I think that's it, Luke.
Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a great day in the US and in Europe and Latin America, wherever you are. Hopefully we've got some new features coming up soon. I love these new feature webinars. We've been
They're great. Yeah.
really whipping the product team to get new features out, and they've done a great job. So hopefully everyone enjoys this. Definitely reach out to us, or definitely watch our comms with our newsletter, and we'll tell you when you can get your hands on these features. But we're always here to help. So have a great day. And Bobby, thanks so much, mate. Lots of fun.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's great to see you again. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon sometime.
Absolutely. I'm missing you guys in New York. Have a good one.
Thanks. See you.
Bye.